Hey everyone, I'm Amy, and I'm going to share my story with you. No hiding anything. It all started when my mom passed away when I was born. My big brother, Patrick, was only 5 years old, and our dad couldn't handle the loss. He turned to drinking, which really hurt him. By the time I was 3, he was gone too. I don't remember any of this, but Patrick told me everything. Thankfully, our grandma stepped in to take care of us. We had enough money because of what Dad left behind, but Grandma's love was what really mattered to us. Patrick went off to college while I was still in middle school. We were so proud of him. Meanwhile, Grandma and I stayed together. She was my support through all the tough times. When I finished high school, it felt like the right time to leave home, even though it was hard to leave Grandma behind. College was a whirlwind of classes and new friends. Then, after I graduated, Grandma passed away. By this point, loss was something we were familiar with. Losing her felt like losing a part of myself, but Patrick and I supported each other. Patrick moved to another city for his job, and I found myself alone in our childhood home. After college, I felt a bit lost, like many people in their 20s, unsure of what to do next. I decided to use my design degree and got a job at a small boutique. At 20, my life didn't have the excitement that others my age seemed to have. No wild parties, no serious relationships, just the routine of work and home, and I was okay with that. But everything changed when I met Henry on a rainy day. A blonde guy with ocean blue eyes came into our boutique, soaking wet and trying to dry off. "Hey, how can I help you?" I asked. "Well, first off, I'm sorry about this wet mess," he said. "Can I get a towel, please?" "Of course, I'll see if I have something in the back to help you dry off," I replied. "Thanks. Actually, I'm here to pick up something for my sister Julie. It's her birthday today. Do you think she likes patterns or something simple yet stunning?" "Definitely patterns. She loves to stand out," I said. "In that case, we have some gorgeous floral prints that I think she'll love," I suggested. It took us nearly 50 minutes to find the perfect dress for Henry's sister. We looked through racks of vibrant patterns and bold styles, sharing our thoughts and laughing along the way. I rang up the purchase at the register, and Henry leaned in a bit, his voice low and a bit nervous. "Hey, Amy, I was wondering if, maybe you'd like to grab a coffee with me sometime." "Oh sure, I'd love to," I replied. "Great, can I get your number so we can figure out a time?" "Of course, here you go," I said as I handed him my number. And that's how I met Henry, who almost became my husband. Going out for coffee with a stranger was probably the boldest thing I had ever done at that point, to be honest. But hey, Henry didn't turn out to be a serial killer, so that's a plus, right? After that first coffee, we started spending more time together. We got to know each other better, and I found out that we had a lot in common. Henry's life story was kind of like mine. He lost his mom when he was young, just like I did. His dad raised him and his sister, Julie, all by himself. Henry's dad was from Switzerland, and his mom was USA. They met, fell in love, and Henry's dad moved from Switzerland to the United States. Henry had a job in the corporate world and was doing well for himself, but what really impressed me was how kind-hearted he was. You could just tell from the way he acted and treated people. Our casual hangouts turned into something more serious. We would spend weekends together, sometimes at my place, just enjoying each other's company. Things were going pretty smoothly between us. Then 2 weekends, my brother Patrick was visiting, and Henry was also around. It felt like the right time, so I officially introduced Henry to Patrick as my boyfriend. "Hey, Henry. Finally, I get to meet the guy who's got my sister head over heels." "Nice to finally put a face to the name, Patrick. How's life treating you?" Henry replied. "Pretty good, man. Running my own little business keeps me busy. It feels like raising a baby sometimes, you know? I'd love to talk more about it, but it's good to know you're here keeping my baby sister company," Patrick said. "Oh, come on, Patrick. I'm not a baby anymore. I'm 21, I said, rolling my eyes. All right, this house is really something. Thanks. Dad built it, but we didn't stay here much. We moved in with Grandma when we were kids. Amy filled you in? Patrick asked. Henry nodded, and we all laughed, feeling the warmth of family and the start of something new. I bet she did. Sorry about your loss, man. Thanks, no worries. So, Amy said you're working hard down at the office on the 25th floor? Yeah, just a regular desk job, nothing exciting. Hey, every job has its value. Let's raise a glass to that. Absolutely. Here's to hard work paying off. Cheers. Henry and Patrick got along really well, and seeing them bond made me really happy. Eventually, I asked Henry to move in with me. He was practically living with me already, so it just made sense. He officially moved out of his rented apartment and became my roommate. Henry was the sweetest guy. He did all sorts of little things to make our home feel cozy and special. For example, he would surprise me with breakfast in bed on lazy Sunday mornings, making my favorite pancakes with extra syrup just the way I liked them. He also left little love notes around the house for me to find. Sometimes I'd come home from work and find a cute message tucked into my bag or stuck to the fridge. It always made me smile and feel so loved. It wasn't just the big gestures that made Henry special, it was the little things too. He would always hold my hand when we were out walking or give me a warm hug when I was feeling down. He was always there for me, through the good times and the bad, and I couldn't imagine my life without him. We had been together for 3 years. Time sure flies by. Then, the day came when I finally got to meet Julie face to face. She had flown in from Switzerland and was planning to stay here for a while. We had spoken on the phone before, but she didn't seem very friendly during those calls. But hey, phone conversations can be awkward. She wanted to meet Henry, so I made sure to be prepared. Henry assured me that Julie was much nicer in person and told me not to worry. When Julie arrived, I tried to stay calm and greeted her with a friendly smile. She started speaking to Henry in Romansh, and I must have looked completely lost. Henry noticed and said, "Julie, remember Amy's here too. She doesn't speak any Romansh." "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Amy. It's nice to finally meet you in person," Julie said, smiling. "I was just telling Henry how it took me a long time to find your house. It's beautiful though." "No problem at all, Julie. I'm sorry I couldn't understand you earlier." "It's okay. So Henry, you and Amy, huh? This is the longest relationship my brother has ever been in. You must be really special." "Well, what can I say? She really is." That night, with Julie and Henry chatting away in Romansh, I felt completely out of place. It was like I didn't belong. That's when I decided I needed to learn Romansh to fit in better with Henry's family. I secretly started taking lessons online whenever I could, even though running the boutique kept me pretty busy. Meanwhile, Henry had a big surprise planned. He was going to propose after we had been together for more than 3 years. He felt it was time. So he took me to the beach one day where he had also invited Julie, Patrick, and a few other close friends. He even asked Patrick for his blessing and promised to take care of me forever. It was a really special moment that made me so happy. After I said yes to the proposal, we jumped right into planning our wedding. We decided to get married in just 2 months. Some people might think it's a bit soon, but we both wanted a winter wedding, so we went for it. Planning the wedding was both exciting and overwhelming. From picking the perfect venue to figuring out the guest list and all the little details in between, there was a lot to think about. But with Henry's help, I finally did it. Learning Romansh was a bit tricky. I had tried a bit of Italian in high school, but Romansh felt like a whole new challenge. Still, I was starting to get the hang of it, even though I knew I had a long way to go. I kept my Romansh lessons a secret from everyone except Patrick. "So, my little sis is finally getting married, huh?" Patrick said. "Yep, she sure is," I replied. "I wish Mom and Dad were here to see this day. They would have been so proud of you and the choices you've made. Yeah, I know they would have been, but I'm grateful you're still here, Patrick. I couldn't have done this without you. Hey, Amy, remember when I used to beat you at basketball? Oh yeah, how could I forget? I laughed. Well, look at us now. You're winning in the game of love. Just a couple more weeks, huh? Oh, by the way, how's the romance coming along? Actually, not too bad, I said with a smile. I haven't told Henry yet. I'm planning to surprise him with a speech and romance at the wedding. Look at you, going all out for love, Patrick teased. You know me, I replied with a grin. But seriously, Henry's a great guy. We've had a few talks, and I'm confident he'll take good care of you. Hey, why are you getting close to my husband behind my back? I joked. All right, I'm hanging up now. Goodbye, Patrick laughed. Fast forward to 4 days before the wedding, and I was buried in chaos, doing last-minute checks to make sure everything was perfect. Henry was right there with me, helping out. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Henry said he'd get it and left for a moment. He came back with Julie. Hey, Julie, I didn't expect to see you here, I said, surprised. I'm here for Henry, Julie replied. Why, honey, it's 4 days before the wedding. Our dad is flying in tonight, and you know the groom can't be with the bride the night before the wedding, right? Oh, right, I almost forgot about that, Henry said, a bit flustered. I'll go pack my bag while you and Amy have some coffee. Sure thing, Julie said, smiling. Henry ran upstairs while I made coffee for Julie and me. So, Amy, I just wanted to say I'm sorry if I've seemed cold or distant. Honestly, I'm really happy you're joining our family now, Julie said. Oh no, Julie, you haven't been cold. Don't worry about it, I replied. Come on, don't be too polite. I know I can be a bit intense sometimes. It's just that I'm really protective of my brother, Julie admitted. I completely understand. My brother, Patrick, is the same way, I said, nodding. Anyway, Dad is excited to see you both too. I'm so glad he can make it. After Julie and Henry left, I was alone in the house. It was still the afternoon, so I decided to take a nap. I headed to the couch to watch my favorite show and hopefully drift off to sleep. As I was getting comfortable, I noticed that Julie had left her glasses behind. I thought about texting her, but I remembered I needed to go near her apartment to check in with the florist, so I decided to drop off the glasses myself. After a 5-hour nap, I put on some joggers, grabbed my car keys, and headed straight to the florist. I checked on the beautiful flower decorations and admired the wonderful work the florist was doing. I made my way to Julie's apartment and rang the doorbell, but it didn't work, probably because it was broken. So I tried opening the door, and it swung open easily. To my surprise, Julie and Henry were not there. Instead, I heard voices speaking Romansh coming from the balcony. By now, I had become pretty good at understanding Romansh, so I listened in on their conversation. Their accents were strong, but I managed to understand most of what they were saying. Here's what I could make out from their conversation. Finally, we have her right where we want her. The fish is in the net. Calling her a fish? That's harsh, Julie. And using her while her brother is supposedly dying is just wrong. Well, it's not certain if her brother is really dying. And even if he is, do you think all that inheritance is too much for a simple girl like Amy? She has her dad's house, her grandma's house, and her brother's business. She's not capable of running a business with half a brain. That's where I come in. You know, I always wondered why you liked her. She's just a sad, lonely orphan with a boring life. But now I see your plan. We could do great things with all that money. And remember, divorce is always an option. I had doubts about the situation, but when her brother called me to talk about his kidney issues, I became more convinced than ever. You're quite the cunning one, aren't you? Listen, Julie, this money could be a game changer for us. Our dead-end corporate jobs won't get us anywhere, but this inheritance could be our ticket to something big. I promise I'll support you if things work out the way I hope. Well, I'm not complaining anymore, Julie replied. Suddenly, Julie turned and walked into the room, her face changing to one of surprise when she saw me. "Oh my goodness, what are you doing here, Amy? We didn't expect to see you." "Henry, come inside. Amy's here to see you," she said, trying to sound cheerful. Henry walked in and shared a quick look with Julie before starting his act. "Amy, how long have you been here?" he asked, trying to sound casual. I just got here, but I really need to go. I just came to drop off your glasses, Julie," I said, feeling my heart racing. I handed Julie her glasses, but she could feel my hand shaking. She looked at me with concern. "Hey, why do you look so pale? Is everything okay? You seem like you're about to cry," she asked. "Well, the florist messed up one of the arrangements, and I think I should go back and make sure it's being fixed properly," I said, trying to find an excuse. "Oh, do you want me to come with you?" she offered. "No, your dad's coming tonight. You should stay home and help your sister Julie with dinner or something." "Are you sure?" "Yeah, I'm sure." "Okay, bye. Drive safe," Henry said. Leaving Julie's apartment building, my eyes were filled with tears. I didn't try to hide them as I walked past curious strangers on the street. All I could think about was what I had just overheard. The words kept echoing in my mind. How could Henry, the man I loved, talk about me in such a cruel way? And my brother's health, what about that? It was too much to handle. When I reached my car, the tears flowed freely. Sitting in the driver's seat, I buried my face in my hands, unable to stop crying. Even though I had a strong urge to confront Henry and Julie right then and there, I knew there was something I needed to do first. See Patrick. I was really worried about him, so I drove back home, hoping to find him there. Patrick was supposed to stay with me for the wedding, and I waited anxiously for him. After what felt like forever, Patrick finally arrived. When he saw me on the couch, crying with swollen eyes, he rushed over, clearly concerned. "Hey there, Amy, what's going on? You seem upset. Did something happen, or is it just cold feet before your big day?" he asked, trying to lighten the mood. "Patrick, enough with the jokes. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Are you sick?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Amy, don't worry about me. Your wedding is just around the corner, and you should be focusing on that," Patrick replied, trying to brush it off. "Patrick, please, I need to know if you're okay," I insisted. "Well, yeah, I've been dealing with some health issues lately," he finally admitted. "What kind of health issues, Patrick?" I asked, my heart sinking. "It's my kidney. The doctors say it's in bad shape," he said, looking down. "Oh no, Patrick. Is there anything they can do to fix it?" I asked, feeling a wave of fear wash over me. He looked at me and said, "They're saying I might need a kidney transplant in the future, but don't worry, they're working on it." "But the chances of finding a donor aren't great, right? This is serious, Patrick," I said, feeling the weight of the situation. "I know, Amy. It's a tough situation, but I believe things will work out somehow," Patrick said with a hopeful tone. "Why didn't you tell me about this before, Patrick? I'm your sister. I should know. I want to help you," I insisted. "No, I can't ask that of you. This is why I kept it from you. I didn't want to worry you, especially with your wedding coming up. Besides, I was hoping things would get better on their own. Who told you about this anyway? Was it Henry? But you should have told me." "We're supposed to be there for each other through everything," I said, feeling hurt. I overheard Henry talking to his sister. I wanted to talk to Henry about it to make sure he would take care of you if anything happened to me. So I did. He promised to keep it away from you though. I'm sorry you found out like that, Amy. I should have been the one to tell you. Can we please pretend we never had this conversation and deal with it after your wedding? He asked. Sure, I'll put it on hold until then, I agreed, trying to stay calm. How about we order some takeout? I have some other things to take care of. Sure, Chinese, Patrick suggested. Yeah, that sounds good. And then you better rest up and get some sleep, I said, trying to lighten the mood. Are you excited? I'm sure it's going to be a one-of-a-kind wedding." After Patrick and I finished dinner, he went off to sleep. It had been an incredibly tough day for me, with so much to process. I decided not to tell Patrick about Henry and Julie's deceitful scheme. I didn't want to burden him with worry. Instead, I resolved to handle the situation myself and teach Henry a lesson he wouldn't forget. Reflecting on everything, I realized that Henry had been using me all along. He enjoyed the benefits of free housing and meals without contributing his fair share. Sure, he'd occasionally give me small gifts, but it hardly balanced things out. I had become his safety net, making sure his life was comfortable without any financial worries. It was a bitter pill to swallow, especially considering the love I had for him. Hearing Henry talk about my brother's health like it was no big deal made me furious. How could he be so heartless? I knew then that I couldn't let him get away with it. I planned to stay calm until the wedding, then reveal who Henry really was. My plan was simple: show everyone his true nature and let them see what kind of person he really was. I wanted him to face the consequences of his actions and watch his plan fall apart right in front of him. He needed to learn that his actions had consequences, and I was determined to make sure he did. The big day finally arrived. Imagine wearing a wedding gown, putting on a fake smile, and pretending everything's fine when deep down you know you're about to walk down the aisle just to break up with your fiancé in front of everyone. It was tough trying to stay calm and pretend in front of all the guests while my bridesmaids buzzed with excitement. It was getting harder by the minute. I hadn't spoken to Henry all morning anyway. After finally getting myself together and putting on my wedding gown, my friends did my hair and makeup. I was all set. One of my bridesmaids brought out a bottle of champagne to celebrate, but I wasn't in the mood. There was still time before the bride and groom's first look, or should I say the last one. Patrick was going to walk me down the aisle, and I thought it would be best to tell him about my plan now. So I asked my bridesmaids to send Patrick in and give us some space. "Hey, what's going on? You look a bit tense. Need someone to talk to?" Patrick asked. "Patrick, I've got something heavy on my mind. I need to tell you what's really going on," I said. "Are you nervous about your big speech? Want to practice with me once?" he asked, trying to help. "No, Patrick. There's something more serious. The thing is, Henry isn't who he seems to be. The other day, I overheard him talking to his sister. I heard some things," I began. "What do you mean? What things?" Patrick asked, looking concerned. It wasn't a casual chat. They were scheming. "Patrick, Henry's in it for the money, and he's interested in your business too," I explained. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, shocked. "Absolutely. I wish I wasn't. That snake, I should have seen it sooner," I said, feeling angry. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. "I didn't want to worry you, Patrick. But now that I know, I can't keep quiet. I'm going to confront him and give him a piece of my mind." "How could he do this to you, to us?" I said, determined to take action. "I don't want to let him get away with this easily. You know what? I'm going out there to tell everyone his real intentions, his boss, his colleagues, his family, his friends. They're all out there. His life will be ruined." "Are you sure about this, Amy? It's going to be messy," Patrick cautioned. "I've never been more sure of anything, Patrick. He needs to face the consequences of his actions," I said firmly. Henry and I had our first look, but I didn't look too excited. I could see Patrick trying hard not to punch Henry right then and there, but it was time for the final showdown. The music started playing, and Patrick walked me down the aisle. Henry, with his fake tears, stood there. I stood next to him, looking at the audience. Everyone was smiling warmly. Before the priest could start, I whispered in Henry's ear to leave politely. Then I took a deep breath and began speaking. "Hi, everybody. I want to thank you all for being here. I know you must be wondering what I'm up to, so I'll let the cat out of the bag." Henry came into my life like a breeze and soon made himself at home. I didn't mind it. Things moved fast for us, and I thought we would be together forever. But there's always a but, isn't there? and in this story, there are 4. "Babe, what's going on?" Henry asked, looking confused. "Well, I've been learning Romansh secretly. Henry's from Switzerland, and I wanted to surprise him with a speech in Romansh today. But guess what? Learning Romansh helped me understand something I wasn't supposed to hear. Henry and his sister Julie have been talking behind my back." "What is she saying?" Henry muttered, looking nervous. "I've heard everything, Henry. You've been calling me a dumb orphan, saying I don't see how you're using me for money. And not just that, you've been eyeing my family's inheritance that my late parents and grandma left for me, and even my brother's business. Can you just shut up? Don't you see people from work are here? My family and friends are here," Henry said, trying to keep calm. "And that's why I needed to show your true colors so everyone can see who you really are. Hey everyone, I hate to ruin the vibes, but I came to speak up about Henry and tell you the truth. So yeah, the party's over," I said, looking around at the shocked faces. I needed a moment to gather my thoughts, so I quietly slipped away from the commotion. Henry and Julie's stunned expressions and their father's disappointed look were burned into my mind. Patrick stepped up, helping everyone to disperse and calm down. After shedding tears alone in my bridal suite for what felt like forever, a gentle knock interrupted my solitude. I hesitated before opening the door, expecting Patrick, but to my surprise, it was Henry. "Do you realize what you've done? My dad's furious, and Julie is beyond angry," Henry said, clearly upset. "And whose fault is that?" "I just told the truth," I replied. "You could have talked to me privately first instead of accusing me in front of everyone. Now, I don't even know if I'll have a job. My boss was already mad at me, and this might be the last straw. Where will I go? I don't even have my own place," Henry pleaded. "That's the whole point, Henry. I can't believe I didn't see your true intentions sooner," I said, feeling a mix of anger and disappointment. "Well, congratulations, Amy. You've ruined everything. I hope you and your stupid brother suffer all your lives," he spat. "Get out, Henry. I don't want to see your face anymore," I said firmly. The rest of the wedding day is a blur in my memory. After finishing another bottle of wine and waiting for Patrick to see off the guests and clean up my mess, he finally drove me home. The first week after the wedding was filled with tears and support from friends and family. But it wasn't just my love life that was in turmoil. Patrick's health was also at risk. After gathering some strength, Patrick suggested I take time off work to be with him. I agreed and went to his home. There, we met with his doctors to see if I could be a kidney donor for him. Unfortunately, I wasn't a match. Despite the heartbreak, I knew I had to be strong, especially for Patrick. He had always been there for me, and now it was my turn to support him through this tough time. It wasn't easy, but I did my best to stay composed and hopeful for the challenges ahead. And now, here we are today, 6 years later. You might be wondering how things turned out for me and Patrick. Well, let me start with Patrick. Over these 5 years, there were many ups and downs. His health got worse, and there were times when I had to drop everything to be with him. But it was all worth it when I received a call from him this morning. "Hey Patrick, is everything all right? How are you feeling?" I asked. "Amy, I'm ecstatic. You won't believe what just happened. I got a call from my doctors, and there's a donor. They've scheduled me for surgery next week," he said, his voice full of joy. "Wow, after 5 years, you've been so strong through it all. I'll be right there with you next week." "This news makes me the happiest person alive," I replied, overwhelmed with relief. "I'm really glad that my brother is finally going to be okay." As for me, I decided to really focus on my career. I moved up from my job at the boutique and started styling clothes for TV commercials and media. Things have been going pretty smoothly. In terms of my love life, I've started seeing someone new. It's only been a few months, but I have a good feeling about this one. As for Henry, he's kind of disappeared from my life. The last time I heard from him was about 3 years ago when he was having a tough time. He would call me up drunk, blaming me for his problems. But I've moved on from all of that. I'm in a much better place now, both mentally and emotionally. I'd like to share a piece of advice with anyone reading this. Always try to keep good intentions in your heart. What goes around comes around, whether it's good or bad. Hey, I had this idea about how sad and unlucky my sister is. I've got the perfect plan. What kind of plan? Just watch closely. Mary put on a fancy wedding dress, the kind you would wear to a wedding. She walked over to the microphone. When she got it, she turned to the guests and said confidently, "Would anyone like to take my sister off our hands? She's not very educated and she's getting old, isn't she?" After she said this, Mary looked at her sister with a smug, mean smile. But she didn't realize how rude her actions were. The mood in the room changed quickly. People started whispering, and some guests gave Mary cold looks. Mary didn't notice and grabbed the microphone again. "Come on, sister, you need to sell yourself more. There are plenty of handsome doctors here. You really don't understand what you've done, do you?" In the next moment, something major and unexpected happened. My name is Amy Schumer, a plain 31-year-old working woman. I don't have any outstanding features except for one unusual fact. After middle school, I pursued a career in law and became a lawyer. I have a sister named Mary who is 3 years younger than me. She's charming and sociable, so our family always treated her specially. I am not noticeable in appearance, just plain and average in style. I'm not especially charming, so my family and relatives never cherished me much. I hardly felt any affection and was treated coldly at home. I couldn't compete with Mary's natural charm, and she got all of our parents' love. All I received were harsh looks. I worked as hard as I could. I tried my best in my studies, earning good grades, hoping to get some attention from my family. But I could never outshine Mary. Eventually, I got tired of trying to win their love and decided to focus on something else. I gave up on being loved and put all my effort into studying. I promised myself that I would find my worth through my knowledge. Studying hard gave me confidence, and my efforts led to good results. I hoped that my success in school would one day earn me a word of praise from my parents. Holding on to this faint hope, I stayed up late every night, studying. Throughout middle school, I was always at the top of my class and did better than other students in every test. But even then, my parents never praised me. Instead, they often criticized my grades. It's not just about being at the top. You need to get nearly perfect scores in every subject. Yes, even if you score 98% in science, it's not perfect. But this recent exam was really difficult. I would try to explain. Excuses again. Your insufficient efforts are why you end up with such results, my mother would say sharply. Her voice was as cold as ice. Are you intending to flaunt those less than perfect grades? All I could do was apologize. Yes, I'm sorry, I murmured softly. No matter how much time and effort I invested, my results never matched my parents' idea of perfect. They never acknowledged my efforts. Any score less than 101% was just a reason for them to scold me. But more than my parents' coldness, my sister Mary's seemingly innocent words hurt more. "Oh, sister, you're not getting lectured again, are you?" She would come into my room without permission and smirk at my report card. Good grades and still scolded. That's sad. I get praise for barely passing. "Did you come here just to say that?" I asked, feeling frustrated. I was worried maybe you were down again, but I didn't expect such a cold reception, Mary said, pretending to be concerned. "If you were really worried, you wouldn't speak to me like that," I replied, trying to keep calm. "See, that's your problem. You're always like this, so standoffish. That's why Mom and Dad don't show you love," Mary said, her gaze cold as ice. She looked down on me with unmistakable contempt. For a brief moment, her attitude was clear even as she left the room. After she was gone, I could hear her cheerful laughter with our parents from the living room. I should have been used to this by now, but the sadness overwhelmed me and tears ran down my cheeks. I had told myself many times that I didn't need my parents' approval and that Mary's words wouldn't affect me. Despite that, my emotions betrayed me, and I cried. In my hand was the crumpled report card, wrinkled from my tight grip. I resolved once again to stand on my own and escape from this stifling family environment. I decided that doing well in my studies and improving my abilities was the key to that escape. From that moment, I threw myself into my studies with even more determination. One day, as the autumn breeze swept through the classroom windows, I received an unexpected announcement from my father. "Amy, you will not go to high school. You will start looking for a job immediately," he stated coldly. I was at a loss for words, unable to hide my confusion. "Why would you say something like that?" I asked with a blank expression. "Further investment in you is unnecessary. If you want to go to high school, pay for it with your own earnings. If that's impossible, then you have no choice but to give up." But I'm still in middle school. Work opportunities are limited for me. How am I supposed to? My protest fell on deaf ears. "Then you must accept this. After discussing it with your mother, we've decided to focus our finances on Mary. We can't afford to spend more on you," he declared firmly. "That's not fair," I screamed internally, but my father's decision was final. His abrupt words seemed to drain all the color from the world around me, painting everything in shades of gray. My mother and sister looked at me with unhidden smiles, enjoying my misery. I understand much more now. There were options like finding schools with tuition waivers or scholarships. However, back then, without knowing how to access that information, I was simply devastated by the closure of my path to further education. Since that day, my passion for learning faded quickly. The praises from my homeroom teacher, who had always admired my grades, felt hollow, and the lack of interest in education at home made my chances of advancing to higher education seem even more hopeless. I started the next stage of my life by working at a local factory right after graduation. Since I wasn't old enough to live on my own, I stayed with my family until I turned 19. I worked as hard as I could, and most of my salary went to the household. I saved the little money I kept for myself for the future. Those tough days felt like crawling through an endless tunnel. On my 19th birthday, I finally left home. I wrote a single letter for my family and walked away from the place that was now just a memory. My family's reaction was as if I had never existed. Complete silence, without a single phone call or letter. At first, living apart from my family caused me heartache, and the loneliness cast a shadow over my days. However, as time passed, the loneliness eased with the busyness of work. After moving out and starting an independent life, the stress I had felt at home disappeared, and I began to experience a mental spaciousness I had never felt before. This newfound peace of mind reignited my enthusiasm. I regained my passion for learning and decided to start studying again. I began with the basics, reviewing them diligently. The joy of learning filled my heart once more. Soon I started to study high school textbooks and began reading extensively. During my reading journey, I became fascinated by books on law, which sparked a deep interest in the legal profession. Despite only having a junior high education, I learned about the preliminary examination system, which allowed someone like me to take the bar exam. With this new information, my dedication to studying intensified. I used every possible moment to study, even during short breaks at work. I memorized legal terms during lunch, always preparing for the bar exam. The people at my workplace, mostly older than me, saw my earnest efforts and supported me. At the age of 24, I passed the bar exam. After passing the exam, I left my long-term job at the factory and secured a position at a top law firm. After about 5 years of training, I set out on my own and opened my law practice. Now, I happily work as a legal consultant for a hospital. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if I told my parents about becoming a lawyer. I think about how they might react and if I could finally meet their expectations. However, I haven't shared anything with them, and deep down, I believe I won't reach out to them. An unexpected reunion with my family came sooner than I thought. One evening, after finishing work, I found a message on my phone from my younger sister Mary. She was getting married. Mary is getting married, I murmured to myself. My sister, now 29, was engaged to a doctor, and her wedding was next month. They wanted me to attend. Despite the long estrangement from Mary and my parents, I couldn't ignore this significant event, so I replied that I would attend. Mary quickly responded with the exact date and location of the ceremony. The message ended with, "Don't forget the wedding gift," which made me smile wryly. Perhaps Mary was more interested in the gift than in welcoming me. I decided to use the wedding as a chance to reunite with the family, and then part ways again. On the day of Mary's wedding, I put on a carefully selected blue dress and headed to the venue. After completing the entrance formalities, I took my seat in the family area where my father and mother were already seated. "You have some nerve showing up here. You must be doing well for yourself with the meager earnings from the factory," my father said coldly. "Indeed, you're right. Introducing someone like her as family does not do us any credit as parents," my mother added with disdain. "Mary shouldn't have invited someone like you," my father continued. I told them exactly that, but they insisted on getting the celebration money anyway, my mother said quietly, even though I was right there. They carried on this conversation without any hesitation. This was the reality I faced. I had a faint hope that sharing my side might bridge the gap between us, but it was quickly shattered. Both my father and mother seemed to completely avoid talking to me. In the silence, I glanced around the venue and noticed some familiar faces among the groom's side. Haven't I seen that person somewhere before? I thought to myself, feeling a sense of déjà vu. As I traced my uncertain memory, I looked up the groom's name and my suspicion turned into conviction. The connection I had anticipated became clear. I couldn't entirely hide my faint surprise. Such a coincidence, almost like a twist of fate, I marveled. However, I decided to keep my emotions in check and spend the day quietly. As the ceremony proceeded, the bride and groom made a glamorous entrance. Guests spoke warm words and gave entertaining performances that softened the atmosphere. As time passed, the banquet gradually shifted to dinner and then to photo sessions. Throughout this time, my parents got up without acknowledging me and moved toward the front where the bride and groom awaited. Mary, as if drawn by a magnet, clung close to the bride and groom, smiling happily in every photograph. Pretending not to be affected by the scene unfolding before me, I focused silently on the meal in front of me. Unexpectedly, my sister Mary approached me. She came closer with a smile, but her eyes had a spark of something more than excitement to see her sister after so many years. "Big sis, it's been such a long time, hasn't it? Are you happy to spend time together like this?" she asked slightly. I nodded quietly and said, "Yes, the banquet food is really wonderful." With a sarcastic smile, Mary continued, "You can't get such luxurious food at the factory you work at, can you? You should be grateful for this opportunity." Something inside me felt like it was being torn apart, but I didn't show it on my face. Mary's words became sharper, tauntingly piercing me. "Oh dear, did I upset you? I'm sorry, but it's natural for you to be envious, isn't it? Your little sister marrying a doctor and all." Mary said the words "I'm sorry" flippantly, as if they were meaningless. I kept my expression unchanged and quietly waited for my next move. At that moment, Mary whispered in my ear, "Big sis, because I feel sorry for you, I've come up with a great idea." Despite trying to stay calm, I asked with suspicion, "A great idea? What is it?" Mary, looking satisfied, said, "You'll see. Just watch closely." Wearing her elegant wedding dress, Mary gathered everyone's attention. She took a microphone from the staff and suddenly announced loudly to the guests, Ladies and gentlemen, you may not be aware, but my sister is here. She may not have the highest education or be the youngest, but if there is anyone kind-hearted enough, could you please take her under your wing? My face turned red. What are you saying, Mary? I exclaimed. Mary continued even louder. Although she doesn't earn much and leads a modest life, is there someone here who can brighten my sister's future? As everyone focused on me, Mary seemed to enjoy my discomfort with a smug smile. At that moment, a shocking scene unfolded. Mary's rude behavior escalated, and even our normally gentle parents joined in. Please treat her kindly, my parents added. This was the last straw for me. Rage swirled within me. To ridicule someone so much at a happy event, how far would they go? I couldn't believe it. But now, it was time for them to face reality. As the atmosphere shifted and murmurs spread through the venue, Mary, unaware she was the center of attention, cheerfully called out, "Amy, look, there are so many doctors here. It's your chance." I stayed silent but conveyed my strong will through my somber gaze. "This is the end for you." Confused, Mary responded, "Eh?" I continued more calmly, "You'll understand soon just how terrible your actions have been." Just as Mary tried to make an excuse, the groom suddenly raised his voice. "Wait, please. Why are you leaving your seats?" The venue was riveted by his voice. Looking toward the groom, it was clear all his colleagues from work were standing up, heading for the exit. Even as the groom tried to stop them, a dignified man, who appeared to be the hospital director, spoke to the groom with determination. The recent remarks of the bride were so unpleasant that I'm in disbelief. "I apologize, but we can no longer stay here. We will take our leave now," the hospital director said. The groom hurried to stop him, offering to take responsibility for Mary's words and actions. "Please wait. I admit her words were inappropriate. I'll speak to her directly and ensure she changes her behavior." However, the hospital director pointed out the gravity of the issue and revealed something the groom didn't know. "The problem isn't just that. Do you not know what kind of person her sister is?" The groom, confused, admitted, "No, I only met her sister for the first time today. All I've heard is that she worked in a factory after graduating from middle school." The hospital director couldn't hide his irritation. "Don't be ridiculous. Her sister is a respected lawyer and serves as the legal advisor to our hospital." The groom was shocked to learn this, indicating he had no idea I was the hospital's legal advisor. Mary and my parents were also speechless. I was the legal advisor of the hospital where Mary's fiancé worked. I had seen him several times at hospital events, which is why he looked familiar. The other guests probably realized this too. Mary's inappropriate comments only made things worse, and that's why the hospital director was so outraged. Although the groom himself had no direct relation to me, the hospital director and staff valued the legal advisor highly. The groom's face turned red, and he stepped toward Mary, raising his voice. "What on earth is this? Because of your carelessness, my reputation is now tarnished." Mary stumbled over her words, then defended herself like a bewildered child. "It's not like that. I truly had no idea my sister was in such a prestigious position." Growing more indignant, the groom continued to scold Mary. "Ignorance is no excuse. How can you speak so lightly and disrespectfully of your own sister? Your behavior is disgraceful. You've truly lost sight of what's valuable." Mary, desperately trying to explain, pleaded, "Wait a minute, listen, I have a good reason." However, the groom, without giving her a chance to explain, declared decisively, "The marriage is off. I have no interest in hearing your excuses. Our engagement ends here." Shocked by his words, Mary collapsed on the spot, her complexion turning deathly pale. In a fit of anger, the groom stormed out of the wedding hall along with the other guests. As I was about to leave, I heard a desperate cry from my sister behind me. "Please help me, Amy." Without being swayed by her cries, I confronted her with a stern tone. "Help you? Why should I? The situation you're in is because of your own actions. Making jokes at others' expense and then playing the victim is pathetic. Mary, filled with confusion and anxiety, pleaded, "Why are you using such harsh words? If I had known about your success as a lawyer." With a quiet yet firm attitude, I responded, "Why should I need to inform someone who has never contacted me about my profession? In fact, I was planning to end our relationship after this wedding. But now, seeing your unfortunate end, I am somewhat satisfied. You must be disappointed that your engagement to a doctor has been called off. Well, you'd better work hard to find your next prospect." With these words, I left the venue with dignity. From afar, I could hear the critical voices of my parents and other guests. Everything proceeded as expected, and Mary's marriage was no more. My parents, who had thought a secure future was assured through Mary's marriage to a doctor, expressed their anger toward her for the first time. Unable to withstand their anger, Mary sought help with a broken heart, but I ignored her pleas. I never answered her calls despite repeated attempts and cut off all contact with the family. I heard that Mary had quit her job and was now without employment, estranged from our parents, and spending her days shut in at home. As for me, I am very happy with both my work and private life, living peacefully without any big problems. Although my bond with my family hasn't been smooth, I am lucky to have a lot of support from people in my professional and daily life. This good environment isn't by chance, but because of my long-term hard work and effort. There were times when I faced tough challenges, but overcoming them made me who I am today. Looking back on my past struggles, I see their value. Now, I hope to keep living a fulfilling life at my own pace, setting realistic goals and keeping stress low. No way, that's impossible. We're living together. You just need to sign the divorce papers. Good luck with your poor life. I stood there, dazed, holding the phone after the call was suddenly cut off. The lawyer couldn't help but burst out laughing. Olivia looked at the lawyer, confused. He was wiping tears with a handkerchief. "My name is Karen and I am the CEO. I've been married to my husband, James, for 3 years. We don't have children. We're both so busy with work, often even on weekends, that we hardly find time for long talks. We mostly see each other in passing, so we try to sync our schedules for overseas trips during our long breaks. It's only once a year, but it's something we both really look forward to. When we got married, we decided to buy a condo on the upper floor of a Bay Area tower. It was a stretch financially, but we thought about the future value of the property. Thanks to that, we're happy with our current life. I have a close friend from high school, Olivia. We sometimes grab lunch together. Olivia is beautiful and has high standards for men. She's not married yet, but is eager to be. She looks for well-educated, high-earning men on dating apps and won't compromise on their income. One day, I was having lunch with Olivia at a cafe near a park. We went to high school and university together, even shared the same classes. That's why we've consulted each other about various things over the years, knowing quite a bit about each other's dating histories and types. During our student days, we shared both fun and sad times. Those are cherished memories now. Since marrying James 3 years ago, we've both gotten busier, and the chances to meet have decreased. Now, we only see each other a few times a year. "I'll come visit your condo next time," Olivia suddenly said. She'd never been to my place before. Then, on the weekend, she came over. I could tell she was amazed, even through the intercom at the entrance. As soon as I opened the door, Olivia looked impressed. "Wow, this place is like a mansion, and that elevator ride was so long." I had chosen a spacious upper floor condo because it was a once-in-a-lifetime purchase. "It's even more spacious than a house. It's beautiful, really incredible," Olivia said as she looked around the condo, turning her head in every direction. "Great location, and an upper floor in a high-rise like this must have cost a fortune," Olivia remarked with a sly smile. "Yeah, you could say it's $1 million condominium. It's got great security too," I said, but Olivia cut me off. reacting only to the term million-dollar condominium. "It must be over $1 million. Your husband must be making a lot," she said, her eyes wide with astonishment. That was so typical of Olivia. She always had high standards for men, especially regarding their income. "James's salary is quite good for his age, I guess," I said vaguely. I felt it was tacky to be too explicit. Olivia had a look that seemed to hint at some ulterior motive. "Can I use your bathroom?" she asked and left the living room. I directed her to the bathroom and then started preparing tea in the kitchen. I was concerned when Olivia took a while to come back. I was about to check on her when she returned, saying, "Just replying to an email." Olivia usually didn't make excuses like that, so I felt a slight sense of unease. While enjoying the cookies Olivia brought as a gift and having tea, she asked, "Can I stay till the evening?" She apparently wanted to greet James. It had been since our wedding that Olivia last saw James, so it wasn't unnatural for her to want to see him. I decided to check with James just in case. James was happy about it. "I might finish work early," he replied in an email. I told Olivia it was okay, and then I started preparing dinner. Olivia was using her smartphone, but then she stood up and went to the bathroom again. I didn't notice while cooking, but Olivia was gone for quite a while. When she came back, she was wearing a familiar necklace. It was my necklace. As I stared at the necklace, Olivia gave an embarrassed smile. "How do I look? Does it suit me?" She posed like a model. Seeing my stunned expression, Olivia started laughing. "Oh, come on, I'm just kidding. I found it and thought it was cute. It must have been super expensive, right? A premium piece for sure," Olivia said, sounding like a child making an excuse for a mistake. "That's a gift for James. Wow, he must be really wealthy to afford something like this," Olivia sighed. But more importantly, that necklace was stored in the closet in the bedroom. It seemed like Olivia had pretended to go to the bathroom and instead went to the bedroom to peek into the closet. I couldn't believe her actions. However, I didn't want to seem petty, so I just emphasized that it was a precious item. Taking advantage of my mild reaction, Olivia made a surprising request. "Can I borrow this necklace for a while? I've got a date with a doctor I met on a dating app. I want to wear it for that. Please," she pleaded, putting her hands together as if praying. Reluctantly, I decided to lend it to her. "All right, but take good care of it. Like I said earlier, it's a gift for James." As soon as Olivia knew she could borrow it, she smiled and started touching the necklace gently. "Of course, I understand," she said, though she seemed to ignore my words. When I finished preparing the meal, I pretended to go to the bathroom to check the bedroom. Sure enough, the closet in the bedroom and the chest beside the bed weren't fully closed. Olivia must have opened every drawer and door she could find. There were fingerprints on the jewelry, watches, and precious metals. She might have touched things but probably didn't intend to borrow them. The shoes seemed to have been tried on, and the heels were bent out of shape. This was clearly going too far. I went back to the living room and asked Olivia, "You touched various things in the bedroom, didn't you? The shoes are out of shape, and there are fingerprints on the watch." Olivia puffed out her cheeks a bit instead of looking sorry. "Please don't do that again," I told her. Olivia went back to her normal face and said, "Sorry. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it and risk hurting our friendship, so I just laughed it off lightly." That's when James came home. He was holding a box of cake. It was the first time James and Olivia had seen each other since our wedding. It was awkward at first, but they slowly started talking, and by dinner, they were chatting like old friends. While I was cleaning the dishes, they were laughing together. "My boss is terrible, right?" James said, laughing. "I envy James's team," Olivia added. James was smiling, his eyes crinkling with laughter. "That's not true," he replied. I was a bit uncomfortable seeing Olivia touch James so casually, but I thought it was better than them being distant. After all, James wasn't usually the type of man Olivia went out with. About a month after Olivia's visit, I noticed a change in James. He spent more time on his smartphone, which he usually didn't do. He often seemed distracted when I spoke to him and asked me to repeat myself. He always took his phone with him, even to the bathroom. It was a noticeable change. I felt like I was becoming a cheated-on wife. I thought about checking James's phone once, but I hesitated to even touch it. Our conversations at home became increasingly rare. James started working on weekends much more often. He was hardly ever at home on weekends. Originally, we barely saw each other on weekdays, but now we weren't seeing each other on weekends either. It felt like we were living separately, even though we were in the same house. Moreover, we started sleeping in separate bedrooms under the excuse of his tiredness. I was thinking about divorce or separation when I found divorce papers on the living room table. Upon closer inspection, James had already signed them. Although I had suspected it, actually seeing them still shocked me. With trembling hands, I called James. I just got home and saw this on the table. What does this mean? It means exactly what it looks like. I want a divorce, James replied. I pressed him for a real reason. I've fallen in love with someone else. It's not just an affair. I'm serious about it. It was clearly cheating. Then I heard a familiar female voice on the phone. It was Olivia. I'm dating James now. I even want to marry him, she said. Though I had suspected it, hearing it confirmed made my heart race and I broke out in a cold sweat. I fell for James the moment I saw him at your house. We exchanged contact details and started messaging. One thing led to another and here we are, Olivia explained. Her tone was harsh. Maybe this was her true nature. James says there's nothing left to discuss. Can you just sign the divorce papers and send them off? Olivia asked. I wanted to talk things over, so I asked her to tell James to come home. No way, we're living together now. You just need to sign the divorce papers. Good luck with your poor life, she replied, and then the call ended abruptly. I stood there, unable to move for a while. After that, sleepless nights continued for me. James didn't come home. I couldn't bring myself to touch the divorce papers. They just sat there untouched. Furthermore, Olivia kept sending me multiple photos of her and James together, flaunting her relationship. It seemed to be an intimate relationship, but this felt like harassment. My mental health deteriorated, my complexion worsened, and sometimes I'd become vacant even during the day. People around me became worried and strongly suggested I go to the hospital. I ended up being somewhat forcibly taken for treatment and started taking medication. I managed to find some peace and started to sleep again. I could somehow go to work, but then an unbelievable thing happened. When I returned from the hospital, something felt off in the room. Going to the bedroom and opening the closet, I found that bags and jewelry were missing. The count of jewelry and watches in the chest was off too. There was only one person who could have done this. Why would she do something like this? What had I ever done to her? My insomnia came back, and I had more sleepless nights, barely getting through my days. During counseling at the hospital, when I mentioned the theft at home, I was strongly advised to consult a lawyer. I contacted the company's lawyer right away and set up an appointment. The lawyer asked me first, "What would you like to do?" "I'll get a divorce. I want those two to face proper consequences," I answered immediately, surprising even myself. Just a little while ago, I was unsure what to do. I couldn't believe how easily those words came out of my mouth. Perhaps I really wanted to punish them after being tormented so unfairly. A week later, I received a message from Olivia. I had sent her a certified letter. Hey, what are you thinking? Sending a certified letter to my workplace? Olivia sounded pretty angry, her voice filled with rage. You must have expected at least this much. Anyway, I'm leaving everything to my lawyer now. I hung up the phone. Olivia called several times after that, but I ignored all of them. Then James called. I had sent a certified letter to his parents' house. Apparently, his affair being exposed at home caused a huge uproar. I wanted to burst out laughing at his self-inflicted predicament, but managed to restrain myself. Feeling that leaving it all to the lawyer wouldn't be enough to calm my feelings, I decided to confront them both. I would denounce them thoroughly on the spot. The lawyer arranged the date and time, and we decided to have the discussion at the law office. A few days later, the two reluctantly showed up at the law office. I thought they would bring their own lawyer, but it seemed they came alone. Olivia stormed into the office, flinging the door open. James followed, looking uncomfortable. "Finally, we meet, you coward," Olivia said, not hiding her anger at all. James tried to calm her down. "You've been avoiding us all this time. Our wedding has been delayed because of you," Olivia said, looking like she might throw her bag at me any moment. James was desperately trying to hold her back. As I watched them with a feeling of pity, the lawyer nodded at me. "Please calm down. If any violence or abusive language occurs, we will immediately call the police," the lawyer said. The mention of the police made Olivia stiffen. With the lawyer's intervention, Olivia and James took their seats, becoming calmer. We sat across from each other at the office table, ready to start the discussion. "James, you're seeking a divorce, correct?" I asked. Olivia sat angrily while James slumped, looking defeated. "We agreed to the divorce. However, since your relationship is considered adultery, we will ask for alimony," I stated. James's face clouded over. "I'll agree to the divorce, but once the alimony is paid, don't contact us ever," he said. I quietly nodded in agreement. Olivia looked displeased, maybe expecting more resistance from me. When the lawyer began discussing the alimony amount, Olivia snapped, "I said any amount is fine. We have plenty of money." Olivia sat arrogantly with her arms crossed. The lawyer looked at her with interest, then said, "Oh yes, didn't he tell you? James is the president of a jewelry company with a yearly revenue of $3 billion. James looked up frantically, trying to restrain Olivia's arm. "Alimony for an affair is nothing to us. I'll even give a proper share of the property," Olivia continued excitedly, her face flushed. James tried hard to calm her down. Olivia shook off his hand and continued, "You can barely make ends meet on your salary, right?" She scoffed with a laugh. The lawyer burst into uncontrollable laughter. Olivia looked at him with a puzzled expression. The lawyer, wiping tears with a handkerchief, said, "Actually, the president is Karen." Olivia was dumbstruck, her mouth hanging open. James hung his head, his body trembling slightly. "James is just an ordinary employee with no position at Karen's company." "I am Karen's corporate lawyer," I stated. Olivia started laughing loudly. "What are you talking about? Are you really a lawyer? Can lawyers lie?" she asked. The lawyer calmly replied, "Why not ask James next to you if what I said is a lie?" James, meanwhile, just bit his lip, looking down. Olivia, growing anxious, grabbed James's arms and began shaking him. "You said you were the president of a $3 billion jewelry company. That's not a lie, right?" James remained silent. He covered his face with his hands, uttering inaudible moans. Olivia, growing more desperate, gripped his arms tighter, repeatedly asking, "Answer me, it's not a lie, right?" James finally whispered in a raspy voice, "I'm sorry." The room fell into a deep silence. Olivia's strength seemed to leave her body, and she let her hands that were gripping James fall limply. "You said you were the president of a company making $3 billion a year," she muttered almost to herself. James's single apology had plunged Olivia into despair. She stood up, trembling. "It's a lie, right? There's no way you're the president." Olivia pointed at me accusingly. "Why didn't I know about this after all we've shared?" I spoke to Olivia calmly, as if guiding her. "Just because we're close friends doesn't mean I tell you everything, especially since you were so fixated on money. I had no intention of telling you." I looked Olivia straight in the eyes without averting my gaze. Olivia seemed to lose all her energy and slumped down. "Then that house, of course, the house is in my name, so James will be the one leaving," I continued. Olivia fell silent, and James continued to hold his head. "James probably didn't want to come here. He knew this would happen. But if he didn't come here, things would be worse. It's hell either way for him now. James is left with nothing but hell waiting for him. The lawyer began to present the evidence. I had first gathered these photos of James and Olivia together. They were the photos she sent to my phone, now printed out. The lawyer placed a voice recorder on the table and played a recorded conversation. Why would you send something like this? I just wanted to share our happiness with you. Olivia's voice filled the room, while James seemed to be holding back tears. Hey, still clinging to the past. I want to divorce quickly. I know what you're clinging to. It's James's income. He's the president of a $3 billion jewelry company, right? You hid it because you thought I might take it, Olivia said, perhaps embarrassed, and covered her face with her hands. Hurry up and divorce and leave that condo. It'll be mine soon. Too bad James didn't come back to you. I'll give you as much alimony as you want. Poor thing, your aim was the money, not James. I'm speechless at how you've been deceived, James. James looked down, tears spilling onto his pants. James and Olivia fell silent. Do you think this is over? What else is there, Olivia? You broke into the house when Karen wasn't there and stole several items, didn't you? The lawyer said calmly. James looked shocked, apparently unaware of this. Hey, what's this about stealing? Olivia bit her lower lip, her hands shaking. No, not me. I don't know anything, she said. The lawyer placed a tablet on the table and played a video. It showed Olivia sneaking into the bedroom, taking bags and jewelry, and stuffing them into her bag. Olivia stared wide-eyed at the footage. What is this? Why are you recording me? Isn't this illegal surveillance? She asked. James covered his face with his hands. Inside our house, we've always had security cameras. Why didn't you tell me that earlier? Who would think you'd break in to steal? I started to get a headache from their ridiculous argument. And you used my key without permission. I wanted those things. It's your fault for not buying them for me, one argued. They kept arguing, ignoring us and the lawyer, and I could only watch in disbelief. Please save your arguments for later. Regarding this theft, we will be filing a police report, I said. Olivia seemed to panic at the mention of the police. The police? That's a bit much, isn't it? I just borrowed something from a friend, she protested. I never gave you permission to borrow anything, I replied calmly. Besides, you're not a friend, you were just a classmate. That's why I'm filing a police report. Olivia seemed to realize she was defeated, and her attitude turned gloomy. Don't say that. I'll pay for it. I'll make up for it. Just please don't call the police. Olivia started to kneel and apologize. I looked down at her and said coldly, You're going to compensate. The value of what you stole is more than your annual income. Are you sure about that? Olivia was speechless. And there's also the matter of the alimony. Olivia turned to James, pleading in a tearful voice. You'll pay, right? Even if you're not the president, you still earn well, right? James was silent, looking down. He can't pay it because he's about to be fired, I added. James looked up in surprise. That's right, since leaving the house, James has not shown up for work. Plus, with this commotion, there have been complaints from his boss, I explained. James looked like he might collapse on the floor. But there's still the property division, right? I'll pay with that, Olivia said, but that wasn't possible. Karen and James had a prenuptial agreement about property. You didn't hear anything from James, did you? He never told you the inconvenient truths, I said, looking at James with disdain. The lawyer placed the contract on the table. The agreement stated that if the marriage lasted less than 5 years, neither party could claim the other's property. Currently, they were in the 3 years of their marriage. Olivia tried to grab the document, as if to tear it up. You should handle that document carefully. It's a notarized deed, and you could be held legally accountable for damaging it, I warned her. At the mention of a crime, Olivia stopped. She then half-heartedly pleaded with James. James, you have savings, right? Use that to pay. James looked at Olivia with resentful eyes. What money? You always wanted sushi, steak, this, that. There's no way I have any savings left. It appeared he also had debts from questionable sources. Olivia's shoulders slumped. It was a pitiable sight. The glamorous appearance that used to make men turn their heads was gone. This was the result of the seeds she had sown herself. The two sat looking haggard and lost, muttering, "This wasn't supposed to happen, and what will I do now?" I decided to leave the rest to the lawyer and stood up to leave. "Olivia, money isn't something you steal from others. It's something you earn through effort." After that, the divorce went through smoothly. I sent all of James's belongings back to his parents. His parents kept apologizing to me and even sent a letter of apology. Olivia was interrogated by the police for illegal entry and theft. My police report led to an investigation, and Olivia was arrested after admitting her guilt. Half of the stolen items had been sold, but I got the rest back. Despite the maliciousness of her actions, her show of remorse and intent to compensate suggested she might receive a suspended sentence. However, Olivia had other crimes. It was revealed that she had been stealing from men she met on a dating app, which meant she would likely face a prison sentence. No wonder she reacted so strongly to the mention of police and crime. James couldn't live in Olivia's apartment and moved to a two-apartment on the outskirts of town. He's looking for a job, but his unexplained absences and poor attitude at his last job make it hard for him to get hired. For now, he's getting by with day labor. After the divorce, I threw myself into my work. Now, I'm expanding our company's jewelry line to Europe. The idea came after a trip to Europe that I took as a break from everything. During that trip, I had the chance to share a glass of wine with the owner of a jewelry store in Switzerland. We talked passionately about jewelry designs. The owner and I hit it off, and he agreed to showcase my company's jewelry in his store. The owner is a wonderful man who, perhaps because of his own history with divorce, understands my heart act. To be honest, I'm focusing on sales in Switzerland, partly to see him. It might be mixing business with pleasure, but I think I've earned this perk after all I've been through. That's how tough it has been for me. I receive regular updates on their situations from the lawyer after the divorce. My name is Sandra, and I am a 50-year-old who works part-time. My husband and I are parents to 3 teenage boys, one a senior and the other a sophomore in high school. Our elder son is currently preparing for his college entrance exams with the dream of becoming a lawyer, a passion he's nurtured since he was very young. This aspiration likely comes from admiring my brother Timothy, a successful lawyer who established his own law firm a few years back. Timothy's dedication to his profession and his ability to inspire others, especially my son, has been a guiding light in our family. Despite being excellent in his studies from a young age, my son's ambition to pursue law intensified because of the encouragement and example set by Timothy. Whenever they meet, my son expresses his determination to become a lawyer, much to Timothy's delight and supportive chuckles. Timothy, who is childless and married to a woman 8 years his junior, enjoys spoiling my sons whenever he visits, creating a warm and encouraging environment for them to grow up in. Despite Timothy's wife being somewhat of an enigma to us, she's known for her eccentric personality and rarely visits our home. We've had minimal interaction with her. Timothy and I, having lost our parents early in life, have always had a close bond. He played a parental role in my life, especially during significant events like my wedding. My husband and I were initially relieved to hear of Timothy's engagement, hoping it would bring him happiness. However, our first meeting with his fiancée left us puzzled due to her seemingly unhappy demeanor, contrary to our expectations of seeing a joyous bride-to-be. On another note, my husband possesses a substantial fortune, estimated at $50 million, including our home, which will be inherited by me in the absence of any children from our marriage. This fact seems to have caused some tension, or at least a noticeable change in how my sister-in-law interacts with us. although she has always been somewhat distant and difficult to communicate with. This complex web of family relationships, aspirations, and the dynamics of inheritance paints a picture of our lives, filled with both ambition and the peculiar challenges that come with interpersonal relationships within a family. In the presence of my brother and his fiancée, I commented on how wonderful they seemed together, a gesture of goodwill and support on what was a significant moment for them. However, once back in the privacy of my home with my husband, I felt free to express the doubts that lingered in my mind. I couldn't help but wonder why my brother's fiancée appeared so markedly unhappy, especially now that their marriage was official. My husband shared my concerns, echoing my sentiments with a note of worry. He remarked on her lack of joyfulness, a quality one might expect in someone just married. My brother, a successful lawyer with his own firm, had recently purchased a house, prompting a visit from our family to celebrate the new milestone. The house was as impressive as I had anticipated, a testament to my brother's achievements. Yet during our visit, the absence of my sister-in-law was palpable. My husband, ever the joker, teased my brother about his wife's absence, asking if she had left him already. The joke, intended to be lighthearted, fell flat as we observed my brother's somber reaction. He explained that his wife often returned to her parents' home for various reasons, and on this occasion, it was to celebrate her mother's birthday. The mood shifted unexpectedly when my brother, with a seriousness that was uncharacteristic, inquired if we would consider allowing him to adopt one of our children should he and his wife be unable to have their own. The question was so sudden and so grave that I found myself speechless, unable to process the request. My husband, perhaps in an attempt to diffuse the tension, responded with laughter, suggesting that such decisions could be discussed in the future. His casual dismissal did not ease my concerns. Instead, I found myself preoccupied with thoughts of what this meant for my brother's marriage and the well-being of his relationship with his wife. Over the years, the absence of my sister-in-law from family gatherings became a norm, to the extent that her existence seemed almost an afterthought. Conversations about her or inquiries into her well-being were carefully avoided, creating an unspoken agreement not to broach what was clearly a sensitive subject. This delicate balance was maintained until a recent celebration in honor of my eldest son's acceptance into his dream law school, during which my brother revisited the subject of adoption. This reiteration brought back all the complexities and unspoken worries that had been simmering beneath the surface of our family's interactions. The juxtaposition of my family's life, marked by milestones and celebrations, against the backdrop of my brother's unspoken struggles, painted a complex picture of familial bonds and the silent worries that often go unaddressed. Despite the joy of my son's achievement, my brother's situation reminded me of the nuanced and sometimes hidden challenges that family members face, leaving me to ponder the best way to support those we love while respecting the boundaries they set. My brother revisited a significant request with us, inquiring if we would consider allowing him to adopt one of our children. This conversation emerged from a place of need and hope, as he and his wife were unable to conceive. The question wasn't new to us. He had broached the subject previously shortly after his marriage, but the context had changed, and the urgency in his tone was palpable this time. Despite the gravity of the situation, my husband responded with a light-hearted suggestion, proposing our eldest son, who shared my brother's ambition in law, as a potential candidate. His casual demeanor belied the complexity and the enormity of the decision at hand, a decision that would undeniably alter the course of our sons' lives. Given that the prospective adoptive parent would be their uncle, the familial bond reassured me somewhat about their emotional well-being. However, my apprehensions concerning my sister-in-law's treatment towards my children, who would not be her biological offspring, lingered. Seeking clarity and assurance, I questioned my brother about his wife's stance on the adoption. His response, accompanied by a strained smile, was meant to allay my fears. He confirmed that the matter had been discussed and agreed upon between them, offering a semblance of relief, yet the decision was too significant to be made hastily. I resolved to engage my sons in this conversation, considering they were of high school age and capable of understanding the implications of such a life-altering choice. The matter was left to be deliberated further, with no immediate conclusions drawn. However, the situation took an unexpected turn a few days later when I received a distressing call from my brother's law firm, informing me of his sudden collapse due to a stroke. Upon arriving at the hospital, I was greeted by his colleagues, whose faces were etched with concern. They informed me that they had been unable to contact my sister-in-law. Attempts to reach her through the landline were futile, and without her mobile number, I felt at a loss. It wasn't until my husband and younger son joined me that we discovered a smartphone among my brother's personal effects, which provided us with the means to contact her. The call was initially met with hostility, as she mistook me for someone else and threatened legal action. It was only when I identified myself and explained the circumstances of my brother's hospitalization that her demeanor shifted from aggressive to apologetic. Yet her reaction to the news of my brother's condition struck me as peculiarly upbeat, a reaction that seemed incongruous with the gravity of the situation. This interaction added another layer of complexity to my already conflicted feelings about the proposed adoption and the dynamics within my brother's family. The incident underscored the delicate nature of family relationships and the unforeseen challenges that often accompany them, leaving me to navigate these turbulent waters with great care and consideration for all involved. When I reached out to my sister-in-law to inform her about my brother's hospitalization, her response was chillingly indifferent. She claimed she was too busy to visit the hospital and requested to be updated on any developments, abruptly ending the call. This reaction left me perplexed and slightly dismayed, questioning what could possibly be more pressing than her husband's critical health situation. It became evident that we couldn't count on her support, compelling us to take matters into our own hands regarding my brother's care. In the days following, my family and I rallied to provide the support my brother needed. My eldest son, having recently completed his university entrance exams and enjoying a period of relaxation, took it upon himself to visit my brother daily, acting as our family's representative. Despite our hopes and prayers, my brother remained in a critical, unconscious state with no signs of improvement. Throughout this entire ordeal, my sister-in-law remained conspicuously absent. She neither visited nor inquired about his condition. Approximately a week after my brother was admitted to the hospital, I initiated another call to my sister-in-law, hoping for a change in her attitude. However, her response was as shocking as it was heartless. She answered the phone with a tone of gleeful anticipation, asking, "What's the matter? Did he die?" Her blatant insensitivity and lack of empathy were staggering. When I questioned her absence at the hospital, she retorted dismissively, claiming her presence would make no difference to my brother's condition. Her indifference infuriated me to such an extent that I ended the call, feeling both enraged and helpless. This series of interactions led me to reflect on my brother's earlier proposal to adopt one of my sons. It dawned on me that perhaps his suggestion was rooted in a deep-seated concern for his legacy and a recognition of the strained dynamics within his own marriage. Their union, brokered by a marriage counseling agency, now appeared to me in a different light. I speculated whether my sister-in-law's motivations for marrying my brother were influenced more by his profession and financial stability than by love or companionship. This realization only added to my growing resentment towards her. Discussing these developments with my husband, he presented a bleak but realistic perspective. Should anything happen to my brother, his wife would stand to inherit everything, given the absence of any children. This stark reality brought new weight to my brother's interest in adoption, suggesting it might have been a contemplative step towards securing his legacy and ensuring his assets remained within the family. When I broached the subject of adoption with my sons, their reactions were unexpectedly varied. My younger son, devoid of any immediate aspirations or goals, surprisingly expressed willingness to be adopted, perceiving it as an opportunity for an easier life under the care of my brother. This stood in stark contrast to my older son, whom I had assumed would be more inclined towards the idea, especially considering his admiration for my brother. This divergence in their responses left me contemplating the complexities of family dynamics, the impact of legacy, and the unforeseen consequences of our choices on the bonds that hold us together. My oldest son didn't want to be adopted because he felt it was his duty to take care of us, his parents. I was happy to hear this, but also felt that he would have been the perfect choice for adoption by my brother, who was a lawyer and needed someone to continue his legacy. Unfortunately, I couldn't go through with the adoption since my brother was unconscious, and I didn't want his wealth, but definitely didn't want his property going to my sister-in-law, who seemed to be waiting for him to pass away. Sadly, my brother never got better and passed away a few days later. I had to call my sister-in-law to discuss the funeral arrangements. Her response was cold. She said she didn't want to be involved in any way and hung up quickly. My husband and I, with help from the law firm staff, organized the funeral. Despite the firm's uncertain future, we learned my brother had made arrangements for its continued operation. The funeral showed how respected my brother was, with many people from various fields attending and sending flowers. This made us realize once again how great he was. My younger son felt regret for not being adopted, especially seeing the influential people who came to pay their respects. He didn't realize how amazing his uncle was. I was a pallbearer at the funeral, but nobody asked why my sister-in-law wasn't there, and her absence went unmentioned. It seemed like we were the only ones who knew about their marriage. They had skipped a wedding ceremony and went straight to their honeymoon, which might be why even some relatives were unaware. After the funeral, we invited everyone to my brother's house to thank them and share a meal. Just as we were reflecting on our loss, my sister-in-law showed up in a bright pink coat, drawing attention. It was a difficult time, filled with mixed emotions, from pride in my brother's accomplishments to sadness over his passing and frustration with the unresolved issues he left behind. When my sister-in-law arrived at the end of the funeral, she announced loudly that she would inherit my brother's $50 million estate and house, as they had no children. Her declaration was met with laughter from my brother's coworkers, confusing everyone. She demanded to know why they were laughing, calling them rude. One lawyer then revealed that she and my brother were officially divorced, and that the divorce settlement had been finalized the day before he fell ill. This news shocked everyone, especially when it became clear she was expecting to inherit despite the divorce. As the discussion unfolded, it was revealed that she was supposed to pay alimony because her affair had caused the divorce. She protested, claiming she had no one to pay alimony to, but the lawyers corrected her, stating that as my brother's sole inheritor, I would be the one to receive it. It was a moment of realization for me and her. The rules of inheritance were not in her favor. She tried to argue that she should still get half of the estate now that the divorce was settled. However, a lawyer pointed out that my brother had already compensated her during the divorce, and that the house, purchased before their marriage, was not subject to division. Despite her attempts to assert herself, mentioning a life insurance policy she thought she was still the beneficiary of, a lawyer quickly noted that my brother, being cautious, likely changed the beneficiary after the divorce. Her attempt to secure a position of advantage amidst a crowd that was clearly not on her side was bold, yet ultimately futile, as legal facts and my brother's foresight protected his assets from being claimed under false pretenses. When I stumbled upon my brother's life insurance policy among his important documents, a moment of tension arose as my sister-in-law snatched it from my hands to eagerly verify the beneficiary's name. Her anticipation quickly dissolved into disappointment when it became clear that the policy named me, not her, as the beneficiary. In a burst of frustration, she vented her true feelings, lamenting her marriage to my brother under the mistaken belief of his wealth, and now facing the reality of receiving minimal financial benefits and the obligation of paying alimony. It was a confession of regret and disillusionment. In response, one of my brother's lawyers, present during this exchange, remarked that my brother had expressed similar sentiments about his decision to follow a marriage counselor's advice, viewing it as a grave error. This was a perspective my brother had never shared with me directly, but had openly discussed with his colleagues, revealing a side of his thoughts and feelings I had not been privy to. Following the revelation of her unsuccessful attempt to secure a fortune through the marriage, my sister-in-law found herself in a precarious financial situation. Obliged to fulfill the alimony payments in installments without a steady income, she desperately sought employment. However, her lack of work experience and commitment quickly led her to abandon the job market. Reverting to her previous strategy, she registered again with a marriage counseling agency, aiming to entrap another wealthy individual. Unfortunately for her, her scheme was short-lived. The man she targeted detected her deceit and took legal action, leading to her arrest for attempting marriage fraud. This incident came to light when I inquired about the alimony payments that had never commenced. The lawyer from my brother's firm informed me of her arrest and the unlikely prospect of recovering any alimony in the foreseeable future. While the financial aspect of the alimony was of little concern to me, the principle of the matter was paramount. I harbored no interest in the money itself, but rather in seeing justice served for her exploitation of my brother's intentions and legacy. I wished for a thorough investigation into her actions, hoping that any other fraudulent activities would be uncovered and adequately addressed in court. In the wake of these events, my family and I transitioned into a new phase of our lives, moving into the spacious house my brother had left behind. This significant inheritance transformed our living situation, moving us from an apartment to a residence that offered more than just physical space. It represented a legacy and a foundation for the future. My eldest son, inspired by the legal wranglings he witnessed and motivated by a desire to uphold his uncle's legacy, dedicated himself to his law studies with renewed vigor and aspiration. He saw in his uncle's colleagues a model for the type of lawyer he aspired to become, one committed to justice and integrity. However, amidst the family's collective uplift from the inheritance, my younger son harbored feelings of disappointment, half-jokingly expressing a wish that he had been the one adopted by our uncle, thereby positioning himself as the direct inheritor of the estate. His comment, tinged with jest, nonetheless revealed an undercurrent of regret and what-if scenarios that lingered in his mind, a reflection of the complex emotions and dynamics that the legacy and its aftermath had stirred within our family. A wife is supposed to be a supportive partner to her husband, but if she disobeys, it could lead to divorce. My husband James took my credit card and spent a lot of money while I was busy working. They were enjoying a vacation abroad, and I felt very disrespected. Angry and upset, I started thinking of a way to get back at him. My name is Karen Gillan, and I used to be a famous actress in the United States. I shone brightly in Hollywood, charming people all over the world and making news internationally. My fame was huge. I stopped being in the spotlight when I married James, who used to manage my career. He took great care of everything for me, from my health to my personal life. Now, we run several fashion stores together. I stepped away from fame when I was 23, even though I was very popular at the time. This decision caused a lot of media attention and disappointed my fans, who begged me not to leave. There were a lot of rumors and stories in the newspapers. Despite all this, James and I married happily, and everyone supported us. Just before I retired, I started my own fashion brand, and now James works for me in finance while I lead our business. Life seemed perfect, but recently James has been acting odd. He seems tired and down all the time. I asked him if something was wrong at work, knowing he tends to keep his problems to himself. I often checked on James because he's not the type to talk about his problems. He waits for me to help him out. Even though it was a bit hard for me, I didn't mind because he had dealt with my difficult situations in the past. I always appreciated his help more than I got annoyed. One day, James suddenly said, "I'm sick of just following your orders." His words surprised me. I had no idea he felt that way. James sometimes said harsh things when he was stressed from work. He tried to act strong there, so he probably felt he couldn't express his frustration anywhere else. I remembered how I used to snap at him when I was an actress, so I could understand his feelings. But still, his words shocked me, and I found myself shaking. I've been holding back. Karen is always busy, and I'm just there to support her, he continued. Even though James earns well, he's still an employee at our company, and I earn more than him. But I never thought that who earns more should matter in our marriage. His complaints really threw me off. Even when you come home, you're all about work. When we go shopping, you just buy whatever you want. How do you think that makes me feel? He said. Despite how things looked, he'd been very patient. Why can't you be more considerate? He asked, looking unhappy. Honestly, his words annoyed me. Our home is mostly supported by my income. His salary is for him to enjoy, and I've always seen that as my way of thanking him for all he has done and supported me with. There were times when he financially supported me when we had less. I wanted to make it up to him for all the personal time he gave up for me until I retired. It hurt to hear him sound so ungrateful. The things I buy are from the savings I manage. If anyone is making sacrifices, it's me. This thought made me angry. Karen, you're too free. I want more time off and to travel leisurely, James said. The salary's good since joining the company, but there's just no time. I left showbiz and joined your company to support you, Karen. Don't I deserve more gratitude? Stop putting your own time first and give me a break. When I retired from showbiz, James continued working as a manager. But once my business started doing well, he wanted to work with me. He said, "If I join the company and stay by your side, Karen, you won't be lonely. I want to be there for you." I wanted to spend time with him, so I let him join. I never asked him to, so I don't understand why he's treating me like this now. Is this life not enough for him? Isn't he being too selfish? While I was thinking this, James made a request that felt like he was adding insult to injury. He said, "My parents' 62th birthday is coming up. Can I take 3 weeks off to celebrate? I want to take them on a trip to Australia. They've never been, and I want to show them the tasty food and beautiful sights." I was surprised by his request and felt something was off. Asking for 3 weeks off is a small thing that he could easily have done at work without making a fuss. Our company is fair, and no one would mind if someone took leave. Yet he chose to make it a big deal and negotiate directly with me. I felt something wasn't right, but these were just suspicions, nothing solid. Trying to keep my cool, I answered, "I'm okay with that, but I can't make it this year. There's a crucial fashion show for my models, and I need to prepare for the London collection. My schedule just doesn't allow it. Can you ask if next year would work? I can adjust my schedule then." As a daughter-in-law, I'm expected to attend my in-laws' 62th birthday celebration. However, our company has 2 big events this year, leaving no room for personal travel. I tried to negotiate a different date, but James refused with a smile, saying, "It's fine, we'll just celebrate with my side of the family. I want to spend some quality family time. Being the accountant, my absence for a week won't really disrupt work, right?" James's words about wanting to spend time just with his family really hurt me. He suggested that I was a nuisance, and that cut deep. So, how about it? I deserve some free time too, right? James often speaks without thinking. He's not mean, just sometimes careless. That's one of his faults, but I chose him as my life partner, knowing no one is perfect. However, I can't accept how he's speaking to me now, even if he doesn't mean it. Why do I have to be spoken to like this? Doesn't he care about me? Hey Karen, are you listening to me? I owe a lot to James's parents. Though I can't often visit because of work, they always treat me like their own child and praise my work. We're so happy to have such a wonderful daughter, his mother said when I married into the family, and his father celebrated our marriage with joy. It's their 62 celebration, and I understand wanting to celebrate it this year, but how can I agree happily after being spoken to like that? It doesn't matter to me. Take 1 week or 2, do as you like. I couldn't hold back my anger and showed it openly. This probably upset James. He stood up, visibly upset, and left the living room without a word. We've been sleeping in separate bedrooms because of work, and from that day until his trip, we didn't see each other at all. Is that really true? Isn't your husband being too harsh? My secretary, noticing my unusual demeanor the day James left for his trip, pressed me for details. She's an exceptional talent and has been supporting me since I started managing the company. As women, we often see eye to eye, and sometimes she's even more reliable than my husband. She's quick-witted yet caring, always there to support me when I'm down or about to make a mistake. I think of her like family. She looks up to me like a real sister, and I often share my thoughts with her. Her advice is wise beyond her years and always helpful. This time, she noticed something was wrong and kindly asked me about it. At first, I hesitated to open up, but then I realized that keeping it in could affect my work. I decided to tell her everything that had happened up to today. She looked really angry when I told her. If I were you, I'd have given him a piece of my mind. You've been too soft on your husband, boss. I get that you love him, but you can't let him walk all over you, she said. Her straightforward advice really hit me. In an environment where everyone usually hesitates to speak up, she's the only one who treats me as an equal. I truly value this openness and comfort. Being in a higher position often means showing more humility and restraint, and having someone who can confront me directly like she does is really precious. You're right. What should I do? I asked her. You can call him, right? Why not talk after work today? Don't worry about spoiling his trip. If things keep going like this, you might be headed for divorce, she continued, pressing the point like an older sister. I had no choice but to agree with her suggestion. I decided to call him right after work. He's in Australia, and there's about a 14-hour time difference from the US. For example, if it's 6:00 p.m. here, it's 8:00 a.m. there, about the time they would finish their breakfast. I had sent him an email in advance to let him know I needed to talk, so he should be expecting my call. I called thinking he'd surely answer, but he didn't pick up. Maybe he's still enjoying himself with everyone. I'll try calling again later. I tried calling every 50 minutes, but still no answer. Worried, I contacted my mother-in-law to check on him. Hello, Karen. You must be tired. I'm sorry we went on this trip without you. We told James we'd prefer you'd be with us, but he insisted. I knew from James that his mother used to be a strict teacher, but now she's much gentler and always cares about how busy I am. Never mind, we're so busy at the company this year I couldn't make time. I'll definitely make it up to you next year, okay? Oh, don't worry about it, she replied kindly. Just having this wonderful trip as a gift from you is more than enough for us. Her words, warm like a smile, seemed strange to me. Wait, a gift? I asked, confused by the term. She seemed surprised by my question. Oh, isn't it? James told us this trip was fully paid for by you since you couldn't join. I couldn't help but shout in surprise over the phone. Realizing I didn't know anything from my reaction, my mother-in-law quickly explained, "Isn't this the trip Karen arranged? James paid for everything with Karen card, so I thought it was from you." The trip included James's parents and his sister's family, 6 people in total. The flight alone cost about $2,000 per person minimum, and with other expenses, it easily exceeded $22,000. It's outrageous to use such a large amount without asking me, especially since I usually cover living expenses. James doesn't gamble or smoke, so his salary should be intact. He definitely earns enough to afford such expenses, yet he didn't. With him not answering my calls, my anger started to boil. Noticing my upset, my mother-in-law spoke with concern. "Karen, are you okay? We'll pay back every penny." James insisted on covering everything, which seemed odd. "My husband and I decided to pay you back later. We miss you and plan to visit you." Thinking the trip was based on a terrible plan, she continued to comfort me. "You're not at fault. It's also your 62 celebration, so please use that money for your enjoyment. I'll definitely get James to pay for it, but could you tell me more about the trip's planning?" I was trying to figure out what James was up to when I realized this trip must have been planned months ago without me knowing. At that moment, I started to doubt him. Then, my mother-in-law revealed a shocking fact. The trip was actually suggested by James's sister and her husband. Surprisingly, it was James's sister and her husband who always criticized me who initiated the trip. James's brother-in-law, an executive at a company competing with mine, looked down on me for being a female CEO. Because of his high pride, James never stood up to his sister. The sight of James showing respect to someone other than herself must have caught my sister-in-law's attention. Even though she has always controlled James, I couldn't stand the fact that she got offended by James just being slightly nice to someone else. With their strong sense of rivalry, my sister-in-law and her husband disliked me, and I always tried to avoid them as much as possible. This couple, always competitive and disliking me, possibly planned this trip to create a rift and exclude me, using James as their source of money. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know anything. James told me you were busy and asked us not to contact you directly," my mother-in-law said. "If my in-laws and I were to communicate, it would have exposed the plan and potentially caused a rift in our marriage." To prevent this, James had already advised his parents not to reach out to me because of my busy schedule. His words were absolute to them. They decided to follow his advice and planned to express their gratitude when they returned. "Karen, did you give James a card or something? He was paying with a gold card I've never seen before," my father-in-law asked suddenly. He must have been listening in, given his urgent tone. His question confirmed my suspicions the moment he mentioned the gold card. I checked my safe and found that the gold card he mentioned was missing. This card is crucial for our company and only James, and I knew the safe's password. I never thought James would steal from the company, but it was clear he had taken the card. As the finance manager, he could easily change the records. Realizing he was misusing company funds, my anger grew, and I told my in-laws what had happened. They turned pale with shock. "What should we do? Are we part of this theft? We'll go back with James immediately. We're as guilty as he is, even if we didn't know," my mother-in-law panicked. My father-in-law, who always takes his responsibilities seriously, agreed, "We'll accept our punishment once we're back." I shook my head, disagreeing. "No need for that. You were just tricked by James. You're not at fault, but I can't let James and his sister's family get away with this. We don't need punishment, but could you help me with something?" I continued. "I ignored James' actions until now, and that's my fault. He's taken me for granted, thinking he can just apologize and get away with it. This isn't just a personal problem. It's about the company. We need to teach him a lesson." "All right, we'll do whatever we can to help," they responded. So we began planning how to get back at James. I was surprised by my own cleverness, but my love for James had turned into hatred and anger. Initially, my in-laws were hesitant about this harsh plan, but as parents, they finally decided to stand by me. Just as we were discussing this, James unexpectedly called. I ended the call with my in-laws and picked up James's call. "What's up? We're enjoying a family-only trip, so what's this important talk about?" James's sarcastic tone irritated me even more. "You took your time calling. Did you go a little wild, huh?" "No way, just having drinks at a nearby bar with Mom and Dad." This confirmed he was lying. I had just spoken to his parents, and there was no noisy bar sound in the background. Besides, they had no reason to lie to me. He was probably out causing trouble with his sister's family. His words cooled my feelings for him completely. "Oh really? By the way, James, you haven't been messing with the company's expenses, have you?" His attitude changed instantly at my unexpected question. "What's that all about?" His tone, usually lighthearted, turned dead serious. Was this his true nature? Seeing his attitude shift as if he now saw me as an enemy, I faced him with equal firmness. "Just checking, since there will be an audit at the company soon. Are you suspecting me?" His defensive reaction showed his guilt. I couldn't help but laugh at his poor response. "What's wrong? I was just concerned, and you're talking about suspicion. Did you do something wrong?" "No, anyway, the house isn't in a mess when I get back, right?" Realizing he was digging himself deeper, he suddenly changed the subject. His actions only made him look more suspicious. I was almost impressed by his foolishness. Who knows? I've been busy with work too. Give me a break. I hate coming back to a dirty house with bugs. A wife is her husband's maid. Disobey and it's divorce. Even our executive says that to his wife. Looks like I might have to do the same, right? You wouldn't want that, so keep the house clean. I had never seen him getting along with the executive. His current words were probably all his own thoughts. But aware of his weaker position, he used the third person to express them. His patheticness made me sigh. Sure, I'll keep that in mind. There was no need to talk to him any longer. James clearly looked down on me, even embezzling company funds. Embezzlement is a serious crime, and I could take him to the police. No mercy even for a spouse, but that alone wouldn't satisfy me after ending the call with James. The next day, while I was busy preparing for the fashion show, I made a phone call to a certain place. Of course, James bombarded me with calls. I noticed his calls late at night while I was out. Luckily, my secretary was driving, so I answered James's call on speaker. "You're late, what have you been doing?" His voice was rougher than I'd ever heard, surprising both my secretary and me. "What do you mean? I was working. Did you do something yesterday? Do something like what? Don't play dumb? Tell me the truth." James was in complete panic, and in the background, I could hear several Australian men and my sister-in-law and her husband confronting him. It sounded noisy. "Something wrong?" I asked. "No, it's just a..." James, who had been blustering, suddenly began to stammer. He realized that admitting anything would put him in a very disadvantageous position. His odd behavior made me explain to him what was coming. "Too bad, James. You were supposed to be having a blast in Australia, but it seems your dream turned into a nightmare overnight, huh? But it's what you deserve for misusing someone else's money. You did something, didn't you?" As he reacted weirdly, I revealed what I had done the day before. I had contacted the president of the credit card company I was contracted with. Despite it being after hours, he agreed to help me due to our long-standing relationship. He immediately suspended the company's credit card. If a credit card is misused, the company doesn't have to pay the store, leaving the store at a loss. However, James had arranged to pay the entire bill at checkout. So with the card blocked, he couldn't pay and was now being interrogated by the hotel receptionists. James, Mom and Dad have already checked out. The taxi I reserved for them has left with them, so there's no one coming to pick you up, I said. My sister-in-law, who was cornered, bombarded James, asking what to do next. Hearing this, James panicked even more and directed his anger at me. "How can you do this and think it's okay? Are you ready for a divorce? Go ahead. I'd rather not have a husband who steals from the company." "I've already talked to a lawyer, and we're starting the divorce process," I told James. He was clearly shaken by my calm reaction. "I've ignored so much of what you've done, James. There was a time when you supported my work, and I was grateful, but I've reached my limit. My patience is gone," I continued. "That can't be." James realized he was in a real crisis and let out a desperate cry. The receptionist kept demanding payment from James and his group, who were now trapped in despair. None of them spoke Australia and were relying on a guide to communicate. Hearing their situation, I suggested switching the call to me. "No one there speaks Australia, right? Let me talk to them for you. You're going to help?" James sounded relieved, thinking I had changed my mind. Without hesitation, he handed his phone to them. I spoke to the receptionists in Australia, explained the situation, and they understood quickly and seemed cooperative. To ease their worries, I also gave them my contact information, which my secretary noted down. After a friendly chat, they returned the phone to James. "What happened? Did you sort it out?" James asked. "Yes, I've taken care of it. Now it's up to you guys." "Really? You're a lifesaver, Karen. I love you," he said, then hurried off, apparently called by the receptionists. James, clueless, ended the call and followed them. "Are you sure about this? It probably won't end well," my secretary asked. "Perfect, right? It's ideal for them to see hell," I responded. An hour later, as expected, I received a barrage of calls again from James. When I answered the call, James was on the line, his voice full of distress. "Karen, what's going on here? What is this place?" He cried out and showed me through a video call the image of a slum area in Sydney, Australia. James and his sister's family were there, looking miserable and stripped of their belongings. They had been taken to what's considered the most dangerous place in Australia, which was completely unexpected. When I was talking to the receptionist earlier, he had mentioned he was a big fan and promised to arrange a severe punishment, but I never thought he meant this place. I couldn't help but laugh at their predicament. "Lucky you're still alive in Australia's most dangerous place. It's a miracle, really." "What? Wait, Karen, what's this about? Explain yourself and come help us right now," James pleaded. Since it was a video call, they could probably hear everything clearly. Behind them, many homeless people were surrounding James and his group, causing chaos. "You guys were causing trouble for Karen. You reap what you sow. Time for reflection," added my in-laws, joining the call unexpectedly. "Mom, Dad, what are you doing?" James was shocked. "A friend of Karen flew us back in a private jet. We returned to the US, and Karen picked us up. We realized you were trying to set Karen up. We asked her to do as she pleases with you guys," they explained. As they said this, the onlookers behind them started confronting James's sister and her husband. The people living in this rough area were ruthless. If you wore anything valuable, even women were not spared. They raised their voices while on the video call. In such a dangerous neighborhood, it's no surprise they became perfect targets. I addressed the crowd in Australia, loud enough for them to hear, telling them these men had been using my card illegally and had treated me horribly. I encouraged the locals to do as they pleased with James and his group, and they eagerly agreed to give them a hard time. Suddenly, the call ended, probably because someone snatched the phone. After that, James and his group were stuck living in the harsh conditions of the slum, treated poorly by the locals. Without money to return to the US, they were essentially trapped abroad. I later confirmed with the hotel receptionist that an acquaintance of his, who is a leader in that slum, had agreed to look after James and his group. In return for his help, I promised to treat him to some good liquor the next time and assured him not to worry. They made a deal to keep James and his group safe from life-threatening situations. In return, I agreed to perform at that hotel, something I hadn't done in a long time. The receptionist mentioned that a live performance video of mine, the only one I ever released, was still his treasure. He invited me to stay at their hotel and sing for them, promising VIP treatment. Following this, I successfully got my revenge on James and his group with the help of the men from the hotel. I also managed to divorce James. I felt refreshed and have been enjoying life with my in-laws. James's sister and her husband were fired from their jobs for unexcused absences. Their phones were taken by the locals, leaving them without a way to contact anyone. My in-laws explained the situation well, so it didn't become a police matter, and no one seemed to care about them. Thus, my ties with James were completely severed. Since then, I've been focusing on work and living a happy life. Occasionally, I call the receptionist to check on James and his group. They're still living in tough conditions, but I don't feel sorry for them. I asked to spare their lives, and now I'm enjoying my life to the fullest.